In early 2024, a whole string of really alarming incidents put Boeing, one of the biggest, most iconic names in aviation, under a massive microscope. This is a company that practically defined innovation, right? And suddenly, they're defined by a crisis of trust. So what exactly happened? And just how deep do these problems really go? Let's get into it.
All right, first up, a cascade of failures. To really get a handle on the scale of this, you have to look at just how quickly things went wrong. It was this rapid-fire series of events that really sparked all this concern. It started with a pattern of failures that it became impossible to ignore. Okay, so get this. In just 1 week, in March of 2024, this absolutely shocking pattern emerges. On March 4th, a 737 engine just catches fire. 4 days later, a 737 MAX slides right off the runway. Then, on a single day, March 11th, a 787 Dreamliner takes a sudden plunge, injuring 50 people, and a completely different plane, a 777, loses a tire during takeoff. This was just an unbelievable string of serious safety events, and, it left everyone asking the exact same question: what on earth is going on at Boeing? So, the whistleblower's ominous warning. While all these incidents seemed to just pop up out of nowhere, it turns out there was one former employee who had been sounding the alarm for years. He was warning that something was deeply, deeply wrong inside the company. And that employee was John Barnett. He was a quality manager who'd been at Boeing for over 30 years. So he knew the company inside and out. And he'd been raising red flags for a long time. After that crazy Alaska Airlines incident, the one where the door plug just blew off in midair, he came out and said, listen, this goes way beyond just one type of plane. His assessment was incredibly blunt. This is not a 737 problem, it's a Boeing problem. So what exactly was he claiming? Well, Barnett's allegations painted this really damning picture of a culture that was all about speed over safety. He told reporters that workers were under so much pressure that they were knowingly putting substandard parts on planes. He said he found serious flaws with the emergency oxygen systems. And when he brought these concerns to management, nothing. No action was taken. His faith in the company was so shot that he even said he wouldn't put his name on any plane coming out of the Charleston plant, saying it just wasn't safe and airworthy. Wow. And then, in a really tragic and frankly shocking turn of events, the day before he was supposed to give more testimony in his lawsuit against Boeing, John Barnett was found dead. The coroner's official ruling was an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, but, the timing of it all, it left a lot of people with a lot of unanswered questions. Which brings us to a culture of negligence. So, was John Barnett just a disgruntled employee with a grudge, or did his warnings point to something much deeper, something systemic? Well, as it turns out, the evidence really started to pile up. So the FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, they did their own 6-week investigation, and what they found was pretty stunning. They did 89 different audits at Boeing and one of their key suppliers. And out of those 89 audits, 33 of them failed. 33! That's more than a third of their quality control checks just not passing muster. Okay, but this next part might be even more telling. The FAA actually sat down with Boeing's own engineers and quizzed them on their own quality control process. The very system that's supposed to keep planes safe. And the average score for understanding that process? A dismal 58%. That's basically a failing grade. And the audit found some, let's just say, alarming things. Like technicians using dish soap as a lubricant on a 737 MAX door seal. Dish soap. And here's the kicker. When investigators wanted to see the work that was done on that Alaska Airlines door plug, they were told, oops, the surveillance footage was overwritten. Oh, and Boeing also couldn't find any of the records for the work on that panel. The evidence just vanished. And you know what? This lack of confidence from the inside, it's not new. There was this old report from 2014 that resurfaced, and it's just jaw-dropping. Al Jazeera secretly filmed engineers at the Dreamliner plant, and they asked 15 of them a simple question. Would you fly on the planes you're building? 10 out of the 15 said no. The people building the plane wouldn't even fly on. Next up, criminal investigation launched. Okay, so with all this evidence piling up from whistleblowers, regulators, and journalists, the fallout for Boeing was about to get a whole lot worse than just some bad headlines. Yeah, the U.S. government stepped in big time. The Department of Justice officially opened a criminal investigation into that whole Alaska Airlines door plug incident. That's a huge deal. It signals that this has gone way beyond a simple regulatory problem. And all of this really gets to a crucial point. A lot of insiders say that for decades, Boeing's culture shifted. It went from being all about engineering to being all about finance, a change a lot of people trace back to its merger with McDonnell Douglas in '97. So this relentless focus on pumping up the stock price, sometimes at the expense of safety, well, it has now completely backfired. Just look at the stock. It's down 25% since the beginning of 2024.
So, the big question is Boeing too big to fail? I mean, despite this absolute avalanche of failures and a criminal investigation, why is it so unlikely that a company like Boeing would just collapse? Well, the answer has a lot to do with its very deep roots in Washington, D.C. A huge piece of this puzzle is just how tied Boeing is to the U.S. government. I mean, look at 2023. A massive 40% of all their money came from government contracts. The U.S. government by itself was 37% of their revenue. They're a top defense contractor, they're a top exporter. Boeing is just woven into the fabric of the country's economy and national security. And that financial relationship, it's backed up by some serious political power. Since 1998, Boeing has been the 9th biggest spender on lobbying in all of Washington. We're talking millions and millions of dollars to make sure they keep that powerful position. So when you look at how deeply entangled they are with the government, you start to see why so many people think they're basically too big to fail.
All right, this brings us to the final and maybe the most important part, Boeing's crisis of trust. Because at the end of the day, their biggest challenge isn't the legal battles or the tanking stock price. It's something much, much more fundamental. The core issue here is a massive, profound crisis of trust. And it's not just about us, the flying public being a little nervous to get on a plane. It's airlines questioning the planes they bought. It's pilots losing faith in their own aircraft. It's even regulators looking in the mirror and wondering if their oversight failed. The goal for Boeing is simple. They have to regain that trust. But the obstacle? Well, that's immense. Because as we all know, trust is a really, really hard thing to get back once it's broken. And that really leaves us with a critical and, honestly, a pretty unsettling question for the future of flying. When trust is broken at 30,000 feet, can it ever truly be put back together?